right, welcome to the Find Your Summit podcast. I am Brian.
And I'm Leah.
Today, this episode is going to drop on February 4th, which is the exact 1 year anniversary of our podcast.
Yay!
Happy anniversary to us. What a celebration.
Happy anniversary. I can't believe it's been 1 year.
we're not even together to celebrate. I just tried to find balloons for my background. I couldn't do it.
Couldn't find it.
I guess I'm carrying all the enthusiasm internally.
Yeah.
We'll wait for our parade for the 2-year anniversary.
Yeah, that's a big milestone too. 1 year is a big milestone as well.
Yeah, and we've talked about this a few times, but I think like a lot of things we've tried in the last year, we didn't have a roadmap for what it was going to look like or even how to define success. And so I think it's cool that we stuck to it.
I do too. That's what I was thinking. Yeah. I was like, we were consistent for 1 year on this podcast, and I'm proud of it.
And we've tried a bunch of things, and I think ultimately it's like a good lesson for determination and grinding things out and just trying to evolve and figure it out. And I think it's been a cool relationship builder and summit storytelling exercise of like, how does this fit into what we're trying to do? And and so I'm proud of us, Leah. It's time to celebrate.
I am proud of us too. It's interesting to see how it transformed, because when we started a year ago, first of all, the intention was that I wouldn't even be on the podcast.
It was just going to be me.
It was just going to be Brian interviewing a series of individuals within the Charlotte community and outside of Charlotte, doing really cool things. And then we ran with that idea, but like, I think it was just like kind of on the spot of, we need someone else. And I was there. It's either me or Dora. So
I don't like to be alone.
Well, I think it's just easier to have a conversation when you have like a table of people. And then
absolutely.
And then it was like, we had the first 15 minutes where it was like kind of catch up, chit chat, and then we went into the interview.
Right.
And then it like transformed into, we interviewed so many people. Like, what if we did like kind of like it was your morning coffee, where we just did like 20 minutes chit chat every week. And I think it's really interesting now, because like our latest conversation was like, what is the direction of this podcast? Like, what is our hope and like aspiration for it? And I think that like, again, telling the story of Summit, but also like knowing that there are people that can relate to it, just growing a brand and what, like, again, like behind the scenes of what happens, what goes into it, the thought process behind the teammates, and just like what, the obstacles that we come across, but also like the little victories and celebrations that we also have.
Right. And I think that's a great point, because I think figuring out how to celebrate victories amid the desire for constant growth and iteration and evolution, I think it's really hard to do, especially for certain personality types. I find it particularly hard. It's weird because it's both necessary and fairly fleeting for me. Like, I need victories and I need to feel good about myself and about Summit and about my coworkers. But I also, like, as soon as I feel good, I'm like, all right,
onwards.
Well, it's almost like, right, it's like when you like achieve something. So you like complete a run or you hike to a peak or something, and then you get to the top. Yeah. And I'm usually like, cool, like time to go back down. Like, let's move on with our day now.
Yeah. I think like when it comes to celebrating victories, for me, it feels like providing that space of seeing how far we've come so far. And I think like a lot of other growing companies and just like, whether you're an entrepreneur or, just going about your daily life, you get kind of caught in the midst of like, just, continuously moving forward, moving up. And when you give yourself that time and space to like celebrate 1 year anniversary of a podcast, or, just 1 year anniversary of putting in an effort into something that you committed to, it like gives you that permission to be like, wow, I've actually come really far. And this is really cool to see the skills that I've acquired and like where I'm going next.
Yeah. So I can't decide if I think it's a blessing or a curse, my inability to like really savor success, because I think to me, as I try to dissect it, it's
Mhm.
like I feel like celebrating success almost makes it feel like it's a rare occurrence. And I also
Mhm.
am someone that feels like success should be and ought to be pretty
Yeah.
constant. And so I don't like, I've never really thought about it, but it's a really important topic to figure out how you process
Yeah.
victories
Mhm.
because no one also wants to work like be on my team. I'm trying to lead this team of people, and if it's like
Yeah.
awesome, let's work, let's bust our ass to pull off this thing, and we pull it off, and then like 11 minutes later, I'm like, all right, guys, the next you're like, we just worked for 3 months for this moment.
Yeah. Well,
It's like
I also think like defining what a victory is, like,
right,
is the because the victory could also be just putting in the effort, like, you know.
right, and that's exactly right. And I think also um, if you're waiting for that final moment, like this, whatever, again, this summit, literal or figurative, to be the validation for what you're doing, I think you're missing the point. And I think for me, that is sort of what like so hitting the summit is like an awesome because you hit the end of it. But it's really if you've celebrated or felt if you've gotten some of that of the entire journey,
Yeah.
then the whole thing is a celebration. Like I
Yeah.
and so I had a English or a history professor in high school who told me once, he was like about the idea of a senior slide. He said, if the whole point of high school is to get into college, which is, and then you sort of stop the last half of high school trying, what you're doing is you're missing the real purpose and opportunity to like get something out of high school.
Right.
And so like, if you wait for this one moment and then you're like on to the next thing. And
Mhm.
so what I don't want to share with our listeners is like, that's not how I feel like I am. I feel like I just am like so in the moment and trying to move forward, but I'm still aware of the successes we have along the way.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I think like again, like recognizing like those successes, like they don't have to be like the achieving of like the summit. It can just be again like learning a new skill like while trying to achieve that summit. Like, you know, I'm not an athlete, but I imagine like if I were to put myself through
Not yet.
a marathon and I decided to go on a run tomorrow,
I
that
can't wait.
that alone is a victory for me because it means that I put in the effort to like go towards something.
Right. Right. And I feel like you'd have been a great character in that Office episode where they host the charity 5K.
Oh my gosh, yes.
My favorite Office episode. So I wanted to read for you. There's a personality test called the Strength Finders.
Okay.
And they test, there's 34 themes, and
Okay.
everyone has their lead themes. And my number one is achiever, not surprisingly. And
Yeah.
I wanted to read you just so you give some perspective to
Yeah.
who I am for this. But it says, um, achiever describes a constant need for attainment. You feel as if each day starts at zero, and by the day's end, you must have achieved something tangible to feel good about yourself. And
Uh-huh.
by every day, you mean every single day, work days, weekends, vacations. No
Yeah.
matter how much you feel you deserve a day of rest, if a day passes without some achievement, you will feel dissatisfied.
Do you feel like that's true?
Definitely.
You're like that read me like a book.
Right. That, I mean, so that's me.
Yeah.
It's like, and
Yeah.
one thing that I think is really important in both achievement and in management is to really recognize that people are different.
Yeah.
And so, but it goes both ways, I think, because I think it's important for me to recognize, to look at you and say,
Mm-hmm.
okay, Lee and I look at achievement differently, and we're motivated by different things.
Yeah.
But also to give myself grace that it's not like bad that I'm super motivated.
Yeah.
Like I also want to own the fact that this is who I am, and like this isn't.
Right.
And so like, and also that it's not like, so you have to sort of craft these things that you're understanding of each other and empathetic, but not to a way where
Yeah.
like anybody's worse or better because of it. Like I don't think I'm better because I have this trait. I just
Right.
realize that this is who I am, and so I live into it.
But I think like yeah, and to that thought, it's like it's just like finding that balance too, because like, you know, being someone who is like striving every single day to have like some sort of like victory or just like success throughout the day, like
Mm-hmm.
I see that person playing the role of like a motivator for other people who might tend to like get in like a slump like me. So
Yeah.
like if I, it's almost like if I had like, it's like a cheerleader in the back, like, you know, kind of being like, hey, like you can do it, you know? And so, and, but I think like that's where that balance comes in. It's like you need like a good, I guess, like mixture of like strengths and weaknesses and personalities, because eventually that will create like a beautiful balance among your team, and just like also just like the people that you have in your life. You know, if you surround yourself with people who may not be as motivated or like bothered, then like I feel like maybe you might be more in a slump. But like if you surround yourself with people who are motivated and like encourage you, then like I feel like then you'll lead to days where it's like, oh, like I had some victories today, and that
Yeah.
obviously builds your self-confidence too.
Yeah. I I feel like as Summit evolves, so to make it a very specific correlation, I think what Summit does that feels like an achievement continues to move. And I think that's what I think helps move Summit along. But like, 2 years ago, it was like, surviving another payroll.
Yeah.
And then a year ago, it was like every time we sold a franchise, which again, every one of those still feels like an achievement.
Yeah.
And then it's like every grand opening feels like this huge achievement.
Yeah.
But now it's like, different product launches or different things. There's just like
Yeah.
the more dynamic and um, sorry for lack of a better word, like the bigger we get, the achievements just they look different. And I think that is okay too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you feel like at work that it's natural for you to be able to identify what achievement looks like, or do you feel like that's something that you have to chart out and say, okay, here is what achievement looks like for me in this project, this role today?
No, I think it's very like obvious what an achievement is, just because of like one, it's always something that I'm super proud of, like, you know, and just like that feeling and the energy around like the teammates regarding, you know, a certain project. Like for example, like grand openings, like we know like we share that energy, we share that excitement with like the cafe and the staff. And so it's very obvious to me like what those celebrations are, because they're shared like among the team. I think that's like what we all share together, and what our, you know, aspirations are for Summit.
Yeah. I mean, so from your perspective though, when you look at me and like the achiever mentality that I have, both from what I read, but also how you've worked with me for the last couple of years, does it seem, be honest, is it like at any point, is it frustrating or off-putting where it's like we did this thing, we achieved it, and then so quickly thereafter there's either a need to achieve something else, or there's like also comes with room for improvement and criticism and we should have done this better? I mean, what does that feel like as part of a team?
I mean, I don't think it's like, I wouldn't say it was like annoying or anything. I think that
Well, I didn't say annoying either. Don't call me annoying.
for lack of better words, like I didn't really know like what language to use. But I think that it's like, I think it's a positive thing and a positive mentality to live by, where it's like being able to look forward. And if you're looking forward, like you're able to kind of figure out areas of yourself that you can, you know, improve on, and also just like continue to keep going. And I think that for me personally, it helps my self-confidence. Like that boosts my like what I'm capable of. It also like challenges me, and it's like in areas of challenge like you're gonna find growth. And like that is, you know, kind of just like how I operate. Like I want to be in an environment that allows me to grow. I want to be in an environment that is positive and like allows me to reflect, and also allows me to celebrate. Like, and I'm open to like those moments of like we're celebrating, and like this was a really successful opportunity. Like we could probably also do shift like one little element to it next time, which I think that just comes with testing new things, trying new things, and then also figuring out like in areas that we can grow.
I think And I think this is probably true for a lot of achievers, but so much of what we do and what I do is rooted in intellectual curiosity. It's a term that I use all the time,
Mhm.
but it's like, how can you do better? How can you do more? How can you? And so, what I don't want it to come across is that like there's a
Mhm.
dissatisfaction with the achievement, but it is more so like a curiosity of how to do
Yeah.
it differently or better. What could we done in it? And I think some people from the outside could perceive that as a dissatisfaction, like, gosh, like
Yeah.
Brian's not happy with anything that we're doing, or like he can't just sit here and be happy. But to me, it's like, man, we did this really well. Like, how
Yeah.
do I learn?
Yeah.
I think it's sort of similar to tests in school. It's like
Yeah.
if you get a 90, it's
Mhm.
like there's a person that gets a 90 and is like, damn it, I didn't get 100. I got
Right.
a 90. It was like, that's really great. I'm really proud of myself. 90 is a great score. But
Yeah,
like
that's a great
what
score.
right, but like moving forward, like what the 10% that I didn't know,
Yeah.
how do I learn that? And
Right.
not be and not that and so I think there's a fine line there about like if
Mhm.
it gets in the way of you being able to be proud of yourself or your company or your teammates
Yeah.
versus like, okay, I just still want to get better.
Yeah, and I think that's why like it's important to be able to have those moments of reflection of how far you've come, because like and celebrating yourself for how far you've come, so that you're not getting like, I guess like, for lack of better words, like getting stuck in a rut of like just not being satisfied and like constantly feeling like, well, I could have done this. And it's like, yeah, you could have, but you didn't. And that's still okay. Like, just try it again next time.
Yeah, and I think um, what I don't want to make people feel like is that they have to be an achiever because I'm an achiever. So like I
Right.
don't want it to be like, great, like I'm waking up tomorrow and I'm still gonna get up at 4:40 and I'm still gonna try to like I want
I
people to
don't feel like
rest
I
if
need to
they
wake up at 4:40.
great, then we're achieved. But like I want the rest if they want to rest. And I think I have an underlying fear that if I like start to rest, that I'm gonna have a hard time going again.
Yeah, I think a lot of people have that fear. Like I've seen it before. I think Joe's like that actually. It's kind of like he always tells me to rest, but I'm like, you literally work like 14 hours a day. Like you
Yeah.
need to rest. But I think that's like a very like real fear that a lot of people experience, like whether it's in their work life or just like outside of it. It's like,
Right.
if I give myself permission to rest, like, am I going to get too comfortable to where I don't want to get back up? And it's like, but I feel like if there's a voice in your mind that's saying that has like, the eagerness to continue moving forward, to continue challenging and seeking out that adventure, you're
Mhm.
never going to get stuck in that rut if you give yourself rest, because like there's like this just like a part of you that's always going to want to seek more.
Right. And I think, one of our values as a company and is curiosity. And I think
Mm.
what I want to impart on people is that I want you to be curious, but your curiosity doesn't need to look like mine. It
Yeah.
doesn't need to look like yours. Like curiosity is a personal thing. So if that means like I'm gonna go away on vacation and read something that has nothing to do with my
Mm.
job, like I want there to be some sense of curiosity of like
Yeah.
learning or personalization or like socialism. Like do you want to get to know somebody? Do you want to learn something? Do you want to practice a skill? Like do you want to
Right.
do your job better? Like I just think it's the mental idea of like asking questions and trying to learn and improve and stay curious. I think
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I think like there is, again, like that fear of asking questions, because it's like, oh, what if I'm wrong, or like feeling silly like that you don't know the information. And it's like, no, like it's okay, like you can continue to be curious and gain that knowledge. And obviously like even if it's not related to work, like it's still going to be something added to yourself, like and perhaps some share, not like I don't study astrology to share, like that's not anything to do with my job, but it piques my interest. and
not
it's
yet, not yet.
and it's something that like I enjoy. So
Right.
it's like maybe I'll slip it here and there about Mercury retrograde, but it's not like like it's
um, no, and I think being a dynamic person is important. I would say
yeah.
one of the interesting things to me is that we also like in most companies, most jobs, like don't have a single measurement of success. I was, like in this fantastical world of an alternate reality where I could do whatever. Like part of me has always wanted to own or run a sports team. And the interesting thing about sports is it's about like the only um, business that where there's like one winner.
Yeah.
So like this NFL, it's like there's a Super Bowl and one team wins the Super Bowl. And it's curious to think of it's like, so everyone's working toward the same thing.
Yeah.
And then it's very clear what success looks like and when it starts and when it ends.
Yeah.
And then it's like, but what about those other 31 teams that don't win? Like, how did they measure success? Like, does that mean it's a failure? Does that mean, and so it's both a blessing and a curse that like we're in an industry where it's ongoing. So you never have to like lose. You're not one of the 31 out of 32 teams that ends every year losing.
Right.
But it's a curse in that like you don't have like something you're building toward, then you find out how you did and then you like rest and then you go again. And so yeah, it's an interesting thing to just like always ongoing, because it's like, cool, we succeeded, but like, what is that? There's no single measurement of that.
There's like no end to the success, really. Like,
right. And it depends what you measure yourself against. It's like, cool, we're the best coffee shop in Davidson. Are we the best coffee shop in Charlotte? Are we the best coffee shop in the United States? Like, are we trying to be the best? Are we trying to, So it's interesting. I think, but I think it will forever evolve. And I think partnered with achievement is perspective, because I think that varies. Like, so what age you are in life, and if you have kids and who's on your team and what matters in the world, like I think your perspective constantly shifts. And so winning probably matters a lot less than it used to, at least for me. I was an athlete and competitive, and I think, and then I sort of learned in the mentality that like, if you have to win something, that means everybody else has to lose. And and I don't necessarily love that idea. Like, I'm not trying to make other people lose,
Right. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Having the mentality, like, I like the idea of being in a position where, like my friends and my families and my like coworkers, like their victories are also my victories.
Yeah.
And it's like, how can I support them along that and like be their cheerleader as well?
Yeah.
So.
Well, it's an interesting moment to like pause and talk about achievement, and like also in the perspective of like, in some ways we've achieved in this podcast because we've made it a year, but also like, are there other things I should be doing now rather than doing this? And I think it's given us the perspective of like, this is a valuable chunk of 30 minutes or 20 minutes every week, or an hour and a half every week, whatever it may be. And so I think taking a moment to like celebrate that we've recorded, I don't know, however many podcasts we've recorded, 50, 60, I don't even know. So,
at least
so we'll maybe our next big celebration will be our 100th episode.
Yes.
We'll do a big, we'll have like a greatest hits. We'll just invite people in.
Yes, that'll be awesome.
Okay. Well, thanks everybody for listening and watching, and we'll catch you next week.
All right. Bye.